Hey everybody, welcome to Thursday Talks. I am here with some of my great friends and we are going to talk today about how to win as a wife. Such good stuff, right? So I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves and maybe just tell how long you've been married. And we'll start with you.
Okay. I'm Sarah Benjamin, and I've been married for 5, almost 6 wonderful years. Yes, that is a blessing.
I am Emily Stewart. I have been married for 3 years, and we just had a little baby girl who is 4 months old today.
And precious.
Yes.
So precious.
That's awesome. I'm Amy Bavaro, and I am still in that newlywed stage. I'm about a year and a half, so I'm making it and thriving.
Yes.
Awesome. And then I've been married for 23 years.
Wow.
I don't know how that's possible. I still feel like I am 23. In my heart, I'm 23. But 23 years. So it's been an incredible journey. It's such an honor. It's a privilege
Yes,
to be married to such an amazing man. And I'm sure you feel the same way about your fellas.
Yes.
But let's start off this talk today and just ask, what do you think the role of a wife is? What is the role of a wife?
Okay. Well, I'll start. I was reading Proverbs 31:3, and it talked about the fact that men shouldn't waste their strength on women that ruin kings. And I thought that was so good because as a husband, he's the king of the household. You know, you're the queen, he's the king. And I think that it's so important that as a woman, we don't ruin our kings. Yes. So we help them to be successful. And I love it because even when I looked at the definition of what a wife is, it doesn't even mention her duties. It doesn't mention anything of that nature. It just says her position in relation to her spouse. And I just thought that was so good because I feel like as a wife, it's not necessarily the things that you do that people can see. Right. It's the things that you do that people cannot see. So the praying for your husband, the things that you do around the house every day that when people come in, it just looks like, man, somebody's doing a great job here. This house is in order. Your children are blessed. Your husband is blessed. Right. So it's all those things to me that, you're that backbone to the family that when they're leaning, you're the one propping them up, and nobody really always knows or always can parade you for those things, but you're that wife, you're that solid figure, you're that familiar thing to your family. So I think that's good.
And I think go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. Yeah, and I would think the same thing that you were saying about that support. Yeah. Whenever I first was getting married, and I would always hear people talk about you got to submit to your husband, and sometimes we can look at that as such a negative thing. And I know for a while I also viewed it like that until I just started really digging in and trying to kind of understand that. And the Lord has placed our husbands as the head of the household, and now that I'm married, I really understand that because there are so many things that my husband does that if I had to do, I would be missing every bill payment. I would, just some of the things that he does that I'm just like, wow, I'm so thankful for that. Right. But then also, like you were saying, that behind the scenes, when I think of a house, I think of the supporting beam. Yes. And I think that a lot of times we hear women, our role is a support role, but a support role is very
crucial,
important.
Yes.
If that support beam's taken out, the whole building falls down.
Sure, that's right.
And so that's a strong portion of a marriage. And so I don't think either one are, better than the other, but I think that they're both crucial. Yes. And if you don't have both of those working together in unison, then, you see that falling down and it's not stable.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's why we have to be women of the word. We have to be women who are in the presence of God, because I think in our Western American culture, we can think of submission as means that we're less than. It doesn't mean that our role as a wife is any less important, but it means that our role is different. And so we have to understand what our role is. But if you take it all the way back to Genesis, when God made Eve, he made Eve as a helpmate for Adam. And so when you talk about what our role is biblically from the very beginning, we were meant to support and to help and to complement our husbands. And what an honor it is that God would trust us with that,
That's
And so
That's
it's so powerful.
Yes, we are. That we're to help meet their needs. We're to help them accomplish their purpose. But I want to go back to something that you said when you mentioned submission. What do you think It means when we talk about submission, because that can be like, you hear people and they're like, ooh, submission.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, this is so funny. I thought about this. When we first got married, we were in a class. So we had this class with our pastor. We were going through these different chapters. And there was a guy in the class and he was like, when are we going to get to this chapter on submission? I can't wait for that. I'll be like, you better submit to me, woman. And we were all just like, oh, buddy, you are in trouble from the start, because the Bible doesn't say just that we're to submit to our husbands. It does say that, but it also says we're to submit one to another.
Yes.
We're all to submit one to
Right.
another. And so when I think about submission, and y'all chime in on this, I think, to submit means to come up under the mission. To sub, like a submarine, means to go up under.
Yeah.
And there's a mission. And together as a couple, we have a mission.
Yeah.
We happen to be professionally on the same mission,
Right.
because we both have a call. And so we are on the same mission. And when I submit to him, I'm coming up under the mission to support the mission.
Yes.
And that's really what it's about. It's not about him being the boss of me. It's us having a common goal. And maybe there's some areas where we disagree. In the areas where we disagree, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say, well, let's just do it your way. And I'm going to support it 100%.
Yeah.
Not, let's do it your way. And I hope it fails, because then I'm going to say, I told you so.
Right.
You should have done it my way.
No.
No. I'm going to support as if it was my idea, and
Right.
I'm going to be that cheerleader,
Yes.
and I'm going to submit in that way. But it helps when you have a spouse who does love you the way Christ loved the church.
Exactly.
Loves the church.
Right.
Like,
Yes.
you know that they love you. They're supporting you. We're submitting one to another. We're coming to a place of agreement. That makes a big difference. But what do y'all have to say about submission?
I've learned this the hard way because I am an Enneagram 8. My husband and I are both like very strong-willed. He thinks he knows how to do it. I think I know how to do it. So when we got married, we had like some rough patches there because this submission thing was really hard for me because I thought I knew what was best for our family. But y'all, when I was in that place of thinking that I knew what was best for our family, our marriage was not as healthy as it is now. It took me, Pastor Melissa said something that set me free. And the guy said it last week. I was so mad. But Pastor Melissa said something last year. She said, submission means giving my husband permission to influence me. Like as ladies, as wives, we have to give our husbands that permission and trust that if we believe God at his word, God has placed them as the head of the household. So we don't know what's best, even if we think that we do. We have to trust that God is speaking to our husbands. God is leading our husbands. And even if we think it's something that they are wrong in, you've said it before, pray. Like, Holy Spirit, if you really feel like something's off, you really feel like your husband is in the wrong, pray for the Holy Spirit to give you confirmation, to give your husband confirmation. And God is not a man that he should lie. He's a man of his word, you know? So giving your husband permission, but we have to give them that permission. We can't like be so guarded and be like, no, I'm not submitting. It's an honor, you know?
And somebody's got to lead.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Somebody's got to lead. You got 2 people leading. You're going to have, this is all you're going to have is this, and a 2-headed monster, both both trying to pull in different directions. And if we're pulling in different directions, we're going to be divided.
Right.
And we're going to be distracted. And we're going to be
Yes.
pulled apart. So we've got to have somebody that leads.
Yeah, I definitely want to chime in on that because I did, Pastor Melissa, I've heard that definition, that power to influence. But I can be a little stubborn sometimes. So, when I heard that, I was just like, God, I'm still having issues with submission, especially as women. Our fathers raise us to be independent. They raise us to be able to make those choices and not to necessarily need a man, right? Yeah. Because whatever experiences they may have had. And so I was just like, what is this? Like, God, show me a way that I can really learn to be submissive. And one of my mentors, I was talking with her and she told me a new definition that really hit me in my heart. And it was just really like, if you truly believe that God has placed this husband, this man in his position, then although I may not agree with you, like you said, I am honoring the position that God gave you in my life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when I'm submitting to you, I'm submitting to Christ because I believe the Christ in you and the position that he's put in you in my life. And so I can submit to that. And I was like, man, when she said that, it just changed the whole game for me. Is that, man, when I'm agreeing with you, I'm believing that God is leading you, like you said, and I'm believing that he placed you in this position. So although I may not agree, I'm going to submit to this because I submit to that position that you have in my life.
Yes, I really love that because I want to even go back to what you were saying about the house divided. And the Bible, tells us a house divided cannot stand.
Right.
Yes.
And so
Right.
there is order and there is leadership in the Bible that shows us, you have your disciples and you have those people who are mentoring you. So there's always someone in a place of leadership. And when you become one, you are one. So you were saying the mission and going separate ways. When you're going separate ways, you're slowing down the mission because you are one.
Yes.
It's like
Yes.
someone pulling my arm this way and another pulling my
That's
arm
so
this
good.
way. I'm just going to break or rip in half
Delay.
over some
Yes.
point. Or I'm stuck in the one spot that I'm standing. And so
Yeah.
just understanding that your marriage has a purpose and that if you want to achieve that purpose, it comes to the level of setting those levels of leadership. And God said it first. He said, your husband is the leader of the household
Yes.
and you're that supporting beam. But again, when you work together, that's the only way the house stands.
powerful.
Because the house
Strength.
divided will
good.
fall.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was really awesome.
So good. And I think too, mentors. Y'all, I think we've all mentioned mentors.
Yes.
Mentorship is so important. It's like,
Yes.
fine,
Yeah.
don't take advice from people who have horrible marriages.
Right.
Say that again, please.
Can we take advice from people who have successful, healthy,
Right.
wonderful marriages?
Right.
And I remember one of my mentors told me one time, she was like, yeah, the man is the head of the house, but the women, we're kind of like the neck. Like we can control or turn the head or, we're that support, we're the
Yes.
support. And so just remember that. They're the head, but it's that position. It's honoring that position. And it kind of makes me think about when I learned I had to submit to authority, period. Like
Yes.
just in general.
Truth.
Yes.
Because it's
It's
like there's
painful a little bit.
Yes, it is. It's so painful. But when you realize it's God's protection over you, that He
Yes.
puts leaders in our life to protect us, not to boss us around, but to protect us. Like
Yeah.
their direction is protection if we can see it as from the Lord.
Right.
And so when you begin to honor your authorities in life, and especially your husband, when you begin to honor them and submit to them as if it is unto the Lord, God
Right.
sees that.
Yes.
And He
Right.
honors that.
Oh, yes.
And so when I learned that with just like bosses and in situations, I was like, I think they're doing it's not a good decision, but you know what, Lord, I'm going to honor them as if I'm honoring just you,
Yes.
because I know that when I do, you're gonna work all of this out for
Yes, He
my
is.
good. So such good stuff. Well, so here's a question:
Okay.
Do you think that wives should put their marriage first or their children first?
Left the book at home, but I had the book. Being a new mom, man, those first few weeks are rough. And so I Amazoned a book at 3 a.m. called Baby Wise about how to get your infant to sleep through the night. So I'm prepared to read this book. I'm it's going to tell me how to get my baby to sleep longer than 2 hours at a time. I need it. The very first chapter of the book, y'all, was titled Right Beginnings. And it's if you want to create a loving environment for the home, the best thing that you can do is prioritize your marriage. Because before you're a parent, you're a spouse. So your
Yes.
marriage has to be healthy. And by having a healthy marriage and prioritizing your role as husband and wife, that's how you're going to create a healthy environment at home. That's how you're going to raise emotionally stable children.
Come on.
So
Yes.
so many times we're well, how do we raise emotionally stable children? How do we create nurturing, safe environments at home? It starts by prioritizing your marriage, because I think a lot of times, and we're learning this especially, our kids need us, but they can't need us more than our marriage needs to be
Yes.
nurtured and put in its
Yes.
rightful place.
Yes.
Because without a marriage, there would be no children.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, and so I
Matter.
think we have to honor God in that, because we had Pastor Josh and Amber Canizaro come a couple of years ago here. And I remember they said something. They were speaking, and they were talking about how they went on a beach trip with their kids, and their kids were little, and the two of them were walking on the beach, and she looked at him and she was like, man, I really hope when our kids are 18 and moved out that we still like each other.
Yeah,
And she said it
truth.
changed the game for them. They had to it was just a
Yeah.
reminder for them to date and to
Yes.
continue to pursue each other, because we don't want our kids to grow up and move out of our house and not even know our own spouse, the person who we fell in
Yes.
love with.
Yes.
Yes.
So absolutely,
Yes, I would definitely also say one thing, just working with kids so often is just they mimic anything you do. And so just knowing that if you do want to set your kids up for a successful life, they need to know what successful relationships look like.
Right.
And they're going to try and look to you because you're their model. You're that person that's their hero in their eyes. I remember I think it was on our Parent Yak podcast, we were talking through and I was saying, when I was a kid, I used to say I didn't like chocolate ice cream. And I was like, I don't like chocolate ice cream. I never tasted it, but I had heard my dad say he didn't like chocolate ice cream. And because he didn't like chocolate ice cream, I didn't like chocolate ice cream.
Oh, wow.
Why? Because I'm mimicking what my parents are showing me. And so just as important as you think it is to nurture them, but it's also important to show them healthy relationships and how to interact with their spouse. Because, well, I mean, we have even had stories, I know it's sharing among staff and everything, about how our relationships mimic our parents sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when you first get out of marriage, I found myself reacting sometimes to, you know, issues like I saw my mom react to issues. And I never realized, you know, that it's because you see those behaviors, you repeat those behaviors. And just knowing that it's just as important to show your kids those healthy relationships as it is to be there to give them their hugs goodnight and all the things like that.
I want to jump right there because I think you said something that was so important. The fact that, we do mimic our parents. We do mimic the experiences that we've had over life, but we're not the 2.0 of our parents. Like, you know, you do have to have mentors, but don't take, you know, somebody else's relationship and foreshadow that on your own, or you won't be successful. And I think that it's so important to me with this question, Matthew 6:33, it says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, all of his righteousness, and then he would add everything else unto you. And that was a scripture that God gave me during my season when I was about to be married. And when you think of that, it says seek him first, right? So seek him first, and a man finds a good thing, he finds that wife. Then in God's way, they procreate, they have children, right? So it's like an order, and God is a God of order. So if we learn to, like you said, create a strong foundation, a strong framework, then, you know, our children can mimic those things and then later on have good marriages. Because a lot of us are going through the things that we're going through because what we saw, you know, other people doing. I think I heard a story one time about a grandmother who always cooked her ham a certain way, you know, and she would always cut off the sides and put it in this pot, you know, and cook it like this. And then, you know, the granddaughter, when she grows up, she cuts off the side of the ham and she cooks it like this, but she's cutting off excess ham. So, you know, the great granddaughter comes in one day and she's like, well, why do we always cook the ham like this? You know, why are you always cutting off the sides? She was like, well, I don't know. My mother did it and her mother did it and her mother did it before her. And so it comes this chain reaction of people doing it this specific way, but it's not the only way to cook a ham, right? You know,
exactly.
So. And it turns out that the ham, that the grandmother, I think the story I heard was that the great grandmother, the reason she cut the sides off was because she had a tiny oven. And it couldn't. She just had a tiny oven. It wouldn't fit. It was like that's the only reason she cut it off. So we don't even know why we're doing certain things, but we're just copying what we've always seen.
I was going to say, I think in all of this, like how to win in all of these areas and how to be a good wife and how to keep your marriage healthy, is communication. Like, and we've even talked about that, like communicating your expectations. Like we have to communicate what is it going to look like for us to date each other? What is it going to look like for me to come up and submit under your leadership? How do I honor you? How do you feel respected? What does it look like for me to be your helpmate? But I think oftentimes as women, like I know I have a lot of uncommunicated, very high expectations. And in my 3 years of marriage, my husband is just like, please communicate, because I'm in my head I'm getting mad at him for things that I didn't even communicate, you know. And so it's
you're
like,
supposed to know.
Read my mind right now.
we have to communicate. And you guys have even said, like in our marriage small group, like have that time where like you sit down and you have like a weekly meeting, and it's like a purposeful time to communicate, you know.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think is so neat is communication. When you think about kids, going back to what you were talking about with kids and the stability of the parent relationship. When we were doing a parenting small group one time, we learned that if your kid's not sleeping through the night, this can be like elementary school. I remember ours, it was a struggle because they want to stay up. You know, one more glass of water. I'm thirsty. And so they would want to stay up. Well, we learned in our parenting small group that if you will every day come home and sit together on the couch and you do this thing called 5-minute couch time, and the kids are basically, it's just providing stability. They see mom and dad communicating in a healthy way. They're sitting down. They realize that the mom and dad are the priority. They're talking to one another, and then it causes there to be this calm in the kids, and the kids would sleep automatically. And we try. Everybody in our small group was like, "That's never going to work. It's never going to work." And so we're like, "Well, try it." And so we tried it, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, it totally worked!" Like they went to sleep and they stayed asleep, no problem. Wow. It just brought some peace into the house. Yes. But we have this. When I was going to go back to expectation. We've told you guys before that with one of our biggest fights that we ever got into right after we got married was because of unexpressed expectations. I had an expectation because in my family, again, Christmas was a big deal, and we
Yes.
are gonna sing songs, and we're gonna play Christmas music, and we're gonna drink hot chocolate, and we're
Yes.
gonna
All
decorate all
things.
day, and it's just gonna be so fun. And I kept having him do all these things. I was like, okay, you're gonna put the tree up. All right, next we're gonna do this, and then next we're gonna put out the manger scene, and then next we're gonna do this. And he got so frustrated because I was constantly like, all right, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And he ended up throwing the Christmas tree across the room, knocked over the
wow.
manger scene, broke one of the manger scene people, and I got in my car and drove away.
Yeah.
And
Oh, wow.
I'm crying. He's
Yep.
upset. And then I came back and he's like, oh God, I'm so sorry. Please don't ever leave again. Because in my, in his, he didn't know where I'm going. Am I coming back? Like,
Right.
what's happening? We this is not how we handle our conflicts.
Right.
And so we had to come to this understanding about expectations and what my expectation was and why I expected that, and then what his capability was and his expectations.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, okay, that makes total sense. You were raised in a single parent home. It wasn't. She did all of it. Like she just handled it.
Right.
And so there was just different. And I think when we don't express those expectations, like you said, you have this underlying tension and you
Yes.
just want to
Yes.
explode,
Yes,
and we
yes,
can't
yes.
do that. So one more expectation let's talk about
Okay.
is when we talk about needs that men have. We want to make sure as a wife, if we want to win as a wife, we want to make sure that we're meeting all of their needs.
Yes.
So that means, and there's great division of labor. Like you need to sit down and talk to your spouse because everybody's different. Like maybe in some marriages, the husband does do the finances, or maybe the wife does the finances because she's better at that particular thing. So there's the division of labor. That's one thing. So you have to decide what's best for you and your
Correct.
marriage. But there's one particular need that only you can meet.
Uh-oh.
And so let's
Bound chicken, wow,
so
wow.
let's talk about sex, baby.
Let's talk about you and me.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. What the way I look at it is, I know that for men, they have to have it. Like it's a thing. Like it's a physical need. And so I think about how I need to eat.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
So if I go 3
Yeah.
days without food, it's not going to be a good day. Like
Right.
it's going to be bad. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm starving and I don't want to leave my husband starving. I want to make
Right.
sure that I'm meeting his needs. So y'all chime in on
I
sex.
came prepared for this one
All right.
today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And I love that you have put that synonymously with eating, right? But the Bible talks about it like water, and we all know that water is a
yes.
necessity. It
Yes.
says Proverbs 5:15. Solomon. We all know about Solomon, the Songs of Solomon, right?
Yes,
But he's talking about the fact that every man should drink from his own cistern or his
Yes.
own faucet. That flowing water he drinks
Yes.
out of his own well. And so I think it's important because, like you said, you don't want him drinking for other faucets and going down dirty faucets and unknown faucets, right? You want him to drink from your faucet, your foundation. And I think that goes beyond sex, which I do believe that sex is the deepest form of communication, but it doesn't start in the bedroom.
Right.
It starts
Yes.
in the beginning of the day.
Yes,
It starts
it
in how
does.
you talk with one another, how you
Yeah.
respect one another, how you communicate with one another.
Yeah.
And then I think it's just like, I love, my husband said this before. He said, I feel like when I can't even articulate anymore how much I love you, then I can do this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's an
Yes.
act that I can show you my deepest form of love and expression and passion for you. So I think that that's important. Like you want to make sure that they're not thirsty. You know what I'm saying? That they're not running out there dehydrated, because you've supplied those needs. Yeah.
And I mean, there's no deeper form of unity than
Yes.
than that, And I think we've got to get back to teaching what the Bible says about sex. Like sex is biblical between a born man and a born woman.
Yes.
When you are within the confines of biblical marriage, sex is designed by God to be a very good thing.
Yes.
And so we shouldn't shy away from that or
Yes.
feel like it's something to be ashamed of, And I mean, it's something that God designed to be good. But I think too, oftentimes as women, what we can be tempted to do is when we're mad at our husband or we're upset or
say
they
it.
don't meet our unmet
Yes.
expectations, we can want to withhold that.
Yes.
And so we have to
That's a
check
no.
ourselves and say, like you were saying, we don't want to, we are giving the enemy stomping ground. We are giving a foothold to the devil
Right.
when we
Yes.
try and withhold something good that God designed for us to be able to give our husbands,
Right.
you know?
Yes.
So
I would definitely say, one thing that I've even found, sometimes we might be arguing and we might feel this tension, but it may be because, hey, when was the last time? and then after that happens, and you're like, oh wow, okay,
frustration.
It's frustration because what I've kind of come to see through that is to view sex as a ministry. It's a ministry to one another.
Good.
Go girl.
It is. It's a ministry to one another because those are needs that we have and we were created to have, and God has given us this gift as a husband, as a wife, to enjoy together and to go at that deeper level of intimacy.
Yes.
And it talks about we become one, and hey, we're becoming one in that moment. We are living out the biblical scriptures of becoming one, and communicating through our soul ties. I mean, that's why it is so important to have biblical marriage, sex, and that biblical confound thing. So yes, I get my words right. But it's a biblical thing. We get to live that out, and we get to minister to one another.
Yes.
And it's a pleasure. And I know sometimes life can get busy, and sometimes we can get tired, and we can have a to-do list. But there are things that you have to value, because that also goes back into that. How do we implement a healthy relationship?
Yeah.
And that is part of a healthy relationship is to have sex.
Yes, that's true.
And so I just think that we have to always remember that.
So it's all about meeting each other's needs.
Yes.
It's remembering that that's so, so important. And we are on the same team. I think it's like remembering, when there's conflict or when there's tension or when there's distance and you're feeling like you were saying you're going at each other. It's like, remember, we're on the same team. We're trying to head towards the same mission. Right. We're on the same team. We want to head for the same goal. And we really just want to be the best wives that we can be, because it's a position that God's honored us with.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's good stuff. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed this talk today. We are so excited to be able to have it. I think we're probably going to keep on talking.
Yes.
With cameras going on. It's good stuff. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please share it with someone. Go ahead and just click that share button and share it with someone that you know that's a wife, I think. And you can keep the conversation going and actually drop some comments. Maybe you have some advice that you would like to drop in there at what you found, how to win as a wife. We'd love to hear back from you too. So thanks for tuning in and watching.